what happened now, General, when you'd finished your retreat in Milltown and you
When
were
I
back
finished
into
my
Dublin?
retreat in Milltown, I came out and I called into the Office of Irish Freedom in Delia Street, and I met Sean McDermott and I met Tom Clark. And I was told that I would meet Diarmuid Lynch and a group of people at 18 North Frederick Street, which was the Keegan branch of the Gaelic League, at 8 o'clock that night. And I went up there that night, and then it was clear that we were the group that were going to interfere with the telegraph and the telephone system in Dublin on Easter Sunday at 4 o'clock when the rising was due to take place. I was sensible enough to realize that there was no use in my butting in any way with regard to the general overall plan for it, and I accepted the part that was being allotted to me. What the part that was allotted to me was that I was to take charge of the destruction of the lines through Howth Junction to the cable station at Howth and the Belfast line, the northern lines. In connection with that work, I was to have with me about 8 or 10 members of the Citizen Army from Baldoyle and 2 volunteers from Sutton. Other jobs were given to different people, and the general question, that is as regards the routes radiating from Dublin, the general question as to what was going to be done with regard to the city wasn't discussed at all. That was in special hands. So that was Holy Thursday. On Friday then, the 2nd Battalion had a meeting of some particular kind of a rearranging kind at the training grounds that they had in Fairview, the Father Matthew Park. And Thomas McDonough was there, and a few other people like that, and generally we were set for 4 o'clock on Easter Sunday. I received a letter from William Pearce, instructing me that when I had finished whatever job I had on the telegraph system, that I was reported to the GPO on Pearce's staff. However, we made our arrangements. We inspected a couple of poles on the Dublin side of Howth Junction, where we were to mobilise about 3:45 on Sunday. We had ropes and saws given to the Citizen Army men in Baldoyle, and I kept in my own possession, to put insulating tape on the handles, 2 small pliers, ordinary hand pliers. And we thought over the situation again on the Saturday, and on Sunday morning I spent a quiet day at Howth, at Sutton. I was living in Bayview House, Sutton, and I had arranged that we would be at our operation point at 3:45 on the Sunday. I was all dolled up in my uniform. I had a small revolver, some signalling flags and things like that, and I was leaving my house at 3:25 to pick up Tom Maxwell at Sachs Lane and Paddy Grant at Sutton Cross and meet the Citizen Army men at the back of Howth Junction. When luckily a fellow lodger, who was also a colleague of mine in the superintending engineer's office of the post office engineers, came up the steps and says he to me, "I see your manoeuvres are off." And to my astonishment, he showed me the Sunday Independent. You didn't break the peace of a place like Sutton on a Sunday by reading Sunday newspapers. He showed me the Sunday Independent and McNeill's orders. So I had immediately to peel off my military finery, called down to Tom Maxwell at Sachs Lane there before Sutton Cross, and telling him I was coming into town to see what was up. I came into town and on a bicycle. I searched Father Matthew Park and could find nobody there. Went down towards Beresford Place, nobody around there, and I saw James Connolly coming out of Liberty Hall. And I made bold to go after Connolly and to ask him would there be further orders. And Connolly turned on me and sharply told me that if there were further orders, I'd get him. And then I knew that I was rather indiscreet. And I cycled away with my tail between my legs as about down Abbey Street into O'Connell Street. Wondering where I go next, I passed up North Frederick Street, and at the corner of North Frederick Street I saw Pierce Beasley talking in a very intense way with a friend of his at the corner. And after my break with Connolly, I suppose I wasn't in the humour exactly. My mind wasn't made up what I was going to do. And I luckily passed and didn't interrupt the conversation that Beasley had and made my way for home. It was very lucky I didn't talk to Beasley, because actually I think Tom Clark and MacDermott and a group of the people that were detonating the rising were actually in session at 18 North Frederick Street at that time. And in relation to what might have happened, my subsequent movement, I think I was very lucky that I didn't get tangled up in purely Dublin circumstances by going and talking to Beasley there and maybe getting in touch with the group that were in the Keating branch at that time. I came home. At that time in Dublin, you very often have a little social or a musical evening. And Harry Dempsey was a nice singer in Dublin at that particular time. He had a sister, Lily Dempsey, who was a national teacher. And when I got home to Bayview, Lily Dempsey and a couple of friends were there for tea. And we sat in and we had our tea. And then there was the beginning of a sing-song. And I was asked to sing. Well, I wasn't a singer, but I had an odd song, one song. And my one song at that particular time was Let Me Like a Soldier Fall. Well, I wasn't going to sing Let Me Like a Soldier Fall that night. And I realized ever after that that it was an awful fraud of a song. So we got through the night like that with a little on my mind. And I decided that I'd go into Dublin the next day. I went into Dublin the next day by train, from 9 o'clock train. Again fooled up around the Father Matthew Park to see could I find anybody. Again I found nobody. Went down to Beresford Place again, and there was a certain amount of activity around Beresford Place. And after a while, I saw Dermot Lynch and Gerard O'Sullivan and Thomas MacDonagh. And at about 11 o'clock, MacDonagh came along to me with his coat swinging around his shoulders, and he said, "Strike at 12." That meant that I was on the flat of my feet in Beresford Place. I looked around, saw a likely bicycle and took it, and made up Lower Gardiner Street. As I passed up the second part of Lower Gardiner Street there, I saw Tom Clark and Sean MacDermott strolling along the sunny side of the street as if they were out having a ramble after Mass on a Sunday. And I made for Baldoyle to mobilise the Citizen Army men. It was a bank holiday. There was no getting anybody in Baldoyle. I just left word that things were moving in Dublin, and that was that. As a matter of fact, most of the Baldoyle people did come into Dublin, and one volunteer, one member of the Citizen Army named McCormack, he was killed in Dublin, I think in the Mendicity. However, I came along up then and I told Grant at Baldoyle and I told Maxwell at the Cross that we were on the job. And I got home, you say, about a little before 12 o'clock, and just at 5 to 12 I was able to leave my home when Jack Cotter came from Dublin with the orders that Connolly said I'd get him if there were further orders. Jack then went straight into Dublin, and I picked up Grant and I picked up Maxwell. And again, to show you the outlook of things, as I was cycling with Maxwell from Sachs Cross to the Cross of Sutton, I looked at Tom and I said to him, "Have you gone, Tom?" "I have," said Tom. "Where is it?" I said, "It's at home," he said. I said, "You better go back and get it. You may want it." So Tom went and he got, it was a revolver he had, and by the time I met Grant at Sutton Cross, Tom was with us again, and the three of us started off to destroy the telegraph system. We had, the only weapons we had were the two small pliers that I had in my pocket. We came along, and there's a turn down to Baldoyle immediately after you pass into Dublin, and a tram was coming out from Dublin, and just as we came to this road turning down to the Baldoyle police station, two DMP men jumped off the tram. Our problem then was, were we to open fire straight away? I had a small .25 revolver under the handlebars under there, but no, we said we instinctively made up our mind that we'd sail in between them, and we sailed in between them. And they didn't take any cognizance of us, although two of us were in uniform, but they were used to seeing us in uniform. We turned down then Kilbarrack, and this was the area in which we were to operate by knocking down two telegraph poles and that. And again, all I had to say was that we only had hand pliers. There was a bridge near Howth Junction, and the natural thing would be for us to cut the wires there, but we were under complete observation from Howth Junction station, so we cut around the right turn to Furnace Bridge, where we had a pole alongside a telephone, alongside a bridge there, and we cut 36 wires there, having to cut them on both sides, because once you cut the wires on one side of a pole, the tension pulled them over. However, we drew the cut wires across the tracks where trains were passing, and then the question was, where were we going to go next? To make a long story short, we moved off through Coolock, and we moved up on the Ballymun Road. I didn't like the idea in a revolutionary period of coming down the big open road of Drumcondra, and I thought we'd come better around the Glasnevin side. As we came down the Glasnevin side, the Ballymun Road, I was surprised to see again two DMP men standing on the right-hand side, outside apparently what was a small police barrack, that although we had manoeuvred a good lot in that particular area, we never knew was there. We had intended turning left, so with that as a distraction, we moved right, and we got to Finglas. And when we got to Finglas, I thought I'd better send Grant, who was in Mufti, into Phibsborough to see what the situation was like there, because we weren't used to revolutions, and we didn't know what three people, two in uniform and just one gun between the two of us and whatever revolvers we had. So we got in behind, at Finglas Bridge, we got in behind what was in fact Dick McKee's house. There was a quarry at the back of it. Dick was afterwards the OC of the Dublin Brigade, and to do a lot of work with myself and Collins. Paddy Grant went in to see what the situation was in Phibsborough, and we moved around the quarry. There was a golf course at Lucan, at least at Finglas at the time. So that was sometime after 3 o'clock. 4 o'clock came, and 5 o'clock came, and 6 o'clock came, and there was no trace of Grant coming back. I got tangled up, just to show you how things will happen, with a boy about 22 years of age, who was a bit of a simpleton, and who was around there picking primroses for his mother. And you're always sensitive of your surroundings at that particular time, and I found myself involved in going off to help him to pick primroses for his mother. And after a while I disentangled myself, and I came back, and we were looking around, And suddenly I saw what I thought meant that the Australians had taken over the golf course. Here was the cocked up hat of the Australians and the fellow with the gun on his shoulder walking up inside and down, walking up inside a ditch at the direction of the golf course. And I came back and I got Maxwell and I said to Maxwell, Tom, the Australians are in the golf course. So we started to scout around the place to see what the situation was. And after a while we saw coming towards us across the field 3 men. The 2 outside with rifles on their shoulders and 1 in the middle. And as we peered a little bit closer, we realized that the fellow in the middle was Paddy Grant. Paddy had gone into Phibsborough and he had gone into Dorset Street and he had gone into the GPO. And he got delighted with all that was going on in the GPO and he forgot all about us until he woke up about 6 o'clock or so, came along to Finglas. Not knowing the district, he didn't know where to turn at Finglas Bridge and he went straight on and he began peeling over the ditches around Finglas, and at one particular point he was just nabbed from inside the ditch, blindfolded, and brought to no less a person than Ash. Ash's forces had taken position on the Dublin side of Finglas village. They were lining the ditches there, and here was a spy coming around to poke his nose into their affairs. So he explained to Ash that he was with me. And that was the way in which I got in touch with Ash. So I knew Ash very, very well. Ash had about 80 men with him at the time. He had Frank Lawless and he had Dr. Dick Hayes as his 2 principal officers. And he was very glad to have some strange officer in the place, as well as someone that he knew had done a lot of work in one way or another around the north side. So Ash gave me instructions that I was to stay with him, that he would send in word to the staff inside in the GPO that he was holding me. The evening developed a little bit, and suddenly an order came out from Connolly to Ash that he was to send a group of men to Blanchardstown to kick up as much noise as possible, full stop. So about 10 o'clock, that was towards 10 o'clock, and Dick Coleman, who afterwards died in an influenza bout in Usk. Dick was detailed in charge of a number of men to go to Blanchardstown and to kick up as much noise as possible. They didn't know the area, and 2 men for St. Margaret's, who afterwards left, not agreeing with there being a rising because of McNeill's order. They left about Thursday. They went off to give directions as to how they could reach Blanchardstown, and Ash turned to me and he said, "Would you like to go with them?" After the party were out on the road moving, so I said I would. And I joined the party at the tail of the party as they were already moving off. And immediately we ran into the problems of cycling at night. It was the Fairyhouse race day. You had a certain amount of motor traffic coming against you. You had a group of cyclists. And the first problem we came up against was I found that some of the party were halted. They had come to a fork in a road, they had strung out a bit, and the leaders of the tail end didn't know whether it was to the right or to the left that the party ahead had gone. I figured out at any rate that if you wanted to strike Blanchardstown, if you kept turning to the left all the time, you couldn't go wrong because it would bring you up against the canal sometime, whereas if you started turning to the right, you wouldn't know where you'd go. So we got a formula that kept us straight on that. But there was no formula for keeping straight on whether you were to have your lamps lighted or not. And you had fellows lighting their lamps and then big headlights of car coming against you, disclosing the whole situation. And it wasn't the kind of a situation that revolutionaries liked to be in, crouching alongside the ditch, exposed to full view, you see, and that. But we got over that in the end, but only with a very considerable amount of confusion when we heard a loud explosion in the Blanchardstown direction. It was raining by this time, and there was general malaise. And we came up then with the head of the party there after a while. When we were near Blanchardstown, the question was, what were they going to do next?
That, I think, General Mulcahy, becomes yet another episode.
Yes.
But before you end, in a brief moment,
Yes.
would you like to leave this as your picture of 1916, of a period of confusion, of a period of many men drawn in by accident? Or how would you sum up in a brief word?
I would sum up this, and it is this that has to be realized, that a group of people decided that they would have a rising. They were fully justified in that by all the circumstances of the case. They were fully justified in the faith that they had, that the people would understand and react to their gesture, and that when they were gone, as they expected to go, that the people would be able to carry on without them, both inspired by their gesture directing their attention to the realities of the situation, number one, and guided by their own instincts, their own initiative, and that local groups would stir up around the place to be gathered again later on and to be controlled later on to a post-rising achievement. Now, you have to understand the mentality of the people that led from the picture I painted of 1908, that they had a unity of spirit, that they had a comradeship that excluded no section of the people of this country. Their companionship was founded on the strength of their own diversity from one another, and the extension of life and the extension of hope and work that it was for them to meet the expanding type of people that they did meet as the movement from, say, 1908 or 1900 grew on to 1916. That you can conceive that there was no military plan, that there was nothing there that would enable any military achievement to take place or to bring military honors to anyone, whether a fellow failed or whether a fellow didn't turn out or that. No one can be blamed for missing fire in the situation at that time. His opportunity was to come later. And the very fact that the arms didn't arrive in Kerry left us, Tom Curtin and Terry McSweeney, in Cork to take their part in the organization of the South for the post-rising developments. And you have to look at what happened during the rising. Get your understanding of that in relation to the intention of the men who started it. And you have to come down then to the end of 1917 and to see what was possible as a result of the fact that the arms didn't arrive in Kerry.
General Mulcahy, thank you for talking to us.